Buenas tardes a todos. Aquí Madonna.
So here we are. My talk today is going to be about incident response, and you'll see that this is great fun. It's basically all about when there's about what happens, when there's an incident and they call you to resolve the incident. Some of you may know me, but my name is easy to remember. It's Pedro Sanchez. So that's a nice, easy name, the name of the Spanish politician, Pedro Sanchez. I founded the Conexión Inversa blog. Anybody familiar with that blog, Conexión Inversa? And I work in Deloitte and in charge of incident response team. So we're going to see a specific case of what I call those fires, I refer to as fires, which are hard to put out. And we're going to talk about what tools we use, and I'm going to give you some demonstrations, some examples based on what we discover. So those of you who know me, you know what I do. And what we've got here on the screen is a bit of a summary of my experience. 10 years in the banking sector, I'm still as poor as ever. I collaborate with the police forces, above all in the past, with regards to child pornography, financial fraud, that kind of thing, and with the INCIBE and the Ministry of Defense. So these are just a few of the ones that have the secret OTAN's or the NATO secret certificate, which is something that they award. And I've worked in Bitdefender. I'm a Bitdefender of the homemade viruses. I work in an incident response team in Romania, and that's been a very enriching work to see how the baddies go into the world of virus and in the world of antivirus. It's really interesting to see. And so I've got this blog, Conexión Inversa. Right now, I don't write much there at the moment, but hopefully in the future, I'll be able to include the cases I have. At the moment, it's kind of technical blog with some simpler elements, so that can also be of interest to people who are looking to start off in this world. I'm still learning, and I like to teach, so therefore, I consider it important to give something back to community. That's the way I learned as well. I've participated in different conferences, national and international, with weird, strange things, different projects, and I'm still waiting for one of my patents for security systems to be approved. And as you know, here in Spain, justice and bureaucracy is slow here, but I'm working on that, getting that patented. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I see security right now, and we're also going to talk about what incident response is. What is this concept? It's really new, and in the United States as well, it's relatively new. It's been around for around 5 years in the United States, where they've really become aware of it, and here it's not really got started yet in Spain, but I think it's going to be something really important for the next few years. It's going to be all about having multidisciplinary teams who can work with hackinetics, malware analysis, and just programming. So we're talking about all of the measures that can be used. And then I'll talk about the anatomy of extortion. I always have to talk about simple things. I always say, I'm so lucky that I have to work at night. All my things go on at night in other countries. And here we can see what happened and how we have evolved in order to eliminate, well, not eliminate, but you'll see that depends on lots of factors, but at least to reduce the impact. And on the other hand, we'll talk about attacks using hidden channels. And there are some things that the tools, cannot get close to. And the only thing we have right now is a brain. And that's what we can use, and some people don't even have that. But we have to use our brains. And so we are going to talk about the current situation of security, the situation nowadays. I always like to talk about cuttings, articles from newspapers. So take a look at these then. Information. if we talk about cyber spying, there's been a golden period, but now everybody has become aware. This is from 2013, okay, when Islamic, extremism hadn't really been talked about. We were talking about using encrypted systems, and we know that ISIS right now works in a different way. But we've got talk here of the ETA terrorist group, which now we don't hear much about because it practically doesn't exist anymore. So if we talk about electronic security, they say that this is a problem. And I could tell you an anecdote which dates back to 2010. When I was with one of the lieutenant colonels, and I said, we've got to, get things, get ready. We've got the Chinese with a cyber army. And the guy said, look out the window. What can you see? And I said, well, soldiers, tanks, a few planes. And he said, how are they going to attack us? How can they attack us? We've got planes, tanks. It's impossible. So that was the culture that existed at that time. The battle was, face to face or using bombs. Not anymore, no. The attackers are, they use social networks. They promote themselves through the social networks. They're really not visible, and it's changed. And if there's a third world war, it's going to start in this way, and then we can see we'll see how it ends. But really, we're starting to have concepts that start to be, computer concepts. And if you think of the United Kingdom, they contract, and I'd heard this news a couple of years ago, they hire or they contract hackers to defend their country. And here, nowadays, I heard some news a couple of days ago that we get hackers from the East, that they hire hackers from the East. Are they better than us? No. In Spain, we have very good people, really good. Do we have to go to East Europe? Or is that just kind of like a smoke screen and they're actually taking people from Spain? But if you're going to get people, you're going to get people from abroad to defend your country when you've got really good people in the country. So that's what I argue, at least. And these dates back to 2013, what we've got here on the screen. And things progress. This is in Tampa. Here we have attacks. The banks defend themselves. What's happened in Spain? Well, what happens in Spain is that nobody has really taken cyber war or cyber defense seriously. Nobody's taken it seriously. Not even the politicians, well, almost nothing. But I mean, even in this area, even less than the rest of things. But everybody's kind of done their own thing, and the companies, organizations that have a lot of money, they are going to protect themselves with tools, with technology, with knowledge, with people. But those that don't have that, well, they've got no chance. If we're talking about a normal product, to protect a company or an organization, you're talking about 100,000 euros at least. If you talk to somebody who makes iron, and that they have to spend 100,000 euros to protect their system in Latin America and Spain, it's really tricky. So, having said that, this has to, go up. Here it says that we are the third country in terms of the third country with the highest number of cyber attacks. And I can remember also Americans from the intelligence service, they talked in Spain about being in level 3. They said, well, we come and we go. What's that all about? Well, communication, yeah, we come and we go. And I said, what are you talking about? And I said, and they said, wake up, we go in and we come out. We enter and we exit the way we like, or whenever we like. That's what they were really trying to say. So little by little, we've kind of woken up. And we start to have more information. Here we have the Secretary of State who says, hey, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to take it seriously. But I'm going to talk about everybody else. I'm not going to talk about me because it doesn't sound good. And this is a culture that we still have to change. So the more problems I have in my organization, if I share my problem with people, the faster I'm going to find a solution. But in the Spanish culture, we find that difficult. And we could almost say also the Mediterranean culture. For the Mediterranean cultures, it's difficult to say, I've got a problem, how can we solve it? And we still have a lot of incidents. So this guy, well, he got his act together. And he says, come on then, instead of using cannons, we're going to look at what this is all about with IT, learning map, Metasploit. How can we, enter this and take it seriously? And so here they create, together with NATO, they create cyber defense teams with people who are very specialized, and both police, civil guard, they're well prepared regardless of whether they may have a lot of work or a lot of cases. And we have, even though we've arrived a bit late and we've taken our time, it's taken a bit of an effort, but we are prepared. And this shows that all of these things that are happening, well, to deal with them, we really need to get our act together, because we've got the attackers, and our new generation attackers, as I call them, and they use APT concepts. We're not talking about normal kind of intrusion or intruders. The age of hackers has come to an end. The one who would enter a server and said, look how good I am, look how bad your security or defense system is. It was all about their ego, because it was a real hacker, somebody who was studying that field. But now they are hired, they are contracted by the mafia, by governments. We're talking about a different concept of hacker. Okay, so therefore they develop much more complex tools. And here we have an APT. Why? Well, I'm not going to intrude. No, what I want to do is to enter and stay there, and I'm going to develop. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to do that with malware. I'm going to hide myself. I'm going to remain inside or behind that installation for a long time, and I'm going to gather data little by little. I don't want money, I want information, and that makes it much more complex if we want to detect malware. And we're just going to talk about a couple of examples. So what does that require? It requires monitoring. It needs to be constant monitoring. Some people say, hey, I've created a tool which is amazing. And when you have an attack, you're going to see a screen telling you that they're attacking you. Well, you can forget about that. The perfect tool does not exist. You might be talking about malware APT in the machine which is being connected with China, and the China is called Xinlu. The Chinese person is called Xinlu. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about a different kind of intelligence, which is going to be the people, and this is important. What's important is, well, where we have to look at where are they attacking. They're attacking critical infrastructures. These are both public and private organizations and bodies, and here people are perhaps may give their money or their data. That might still happen, but if we're talking about companies, institutions, the degree of awareness is different. And we've got lots of things. We've got products, brands, models, concepts, UTMs, firewalls, all that kind of thing. And this is like a cocktail shaker, If we talk about computers, well, in the past, security was easier. It was simpler. You just had intruder detection behind the firewall. You had these kind of protected systems with antivirus software. But now antivirus needs to be certified. I don't know if you've seen this or experienced this, and this is true. In order to give you an example of Kaspersky, you have to have a certificate in order to use the console to deploy the agents. I mean, you need to study a master's degree to be able to do that.
Fuegos.
And now I can multiply that by the firewall and by the intruder detector. So eventually, you need such a wide knowledge of your network and the products that very often either you outsource that or you'll end up losing the opportunity. And when that happens, the attacker will be there to take advantage of that. So please bear this in mind. And this applies to all technologies we have nowadays. Next, we'll see a short example about how this is easy to skip and the techniques, which is quite funny. So there are a few for anti-malware brands, and these are easily ignored by touching a bit of the code, saying, well, I'm not the malware, I'm the explorer. Okay, you're the explorer, please come in. And nowadays we also have the called sandboxing. If I have a program here, I have a malware, and I'm going to say, okay, if the bad guy knows what you have and the underlying technology, you may be able to avoid this too. So these techniques will lead you to that. So often, technology, as we usually say, is a textbook tool, but it's not a solution. This is why we have the so-called cyber incidents response teams, who are the people who have that ability of that knowledge. And I'm not speaking about myself, I'm human and I do make mistakes, but initially it gives us the capability of having a global perspective in the face of an attack and how to minimize the response time. To do so, we'll talk about cyber incident response. The concept is very clear. It's this, no more. It's not a group of researchers who set up the camp there when there's a fire. No, there's a fire, I get told, I'm the first intervention, I go there, I put out the fire and I leave. I don't mind about the state of the place afterwards. That's the cyber incident response theory. The anti-incident response team. The first team that gets there whenever there's an incident, which is a team that suffers the most. Because here we're talking about the fire. The fire burns. If it burns, you get away from it. You put water on it and you go away with it. When you're at a company and you have an attack, you have the financial director, the general director, the company president. They're all on top of you. Why me? What have they stolen? Well, I just got here. But why? And they keep asking you funny questions, and you could actually be a bit more ethereal in this regard. So this is our problem. We are a firefighting team, we know how to put out fires, but we will not be able to reply some questions sometimes, and that we'll try to solve them, obviously. So what does the firefighting team does? It analyzes, I do it. As a comparison, they contain and they solve. So they contain for the fire not to be spread. They solve the part that is on fire, but I cannot solve the infrastructure of your organization because it may be badly designed. So an incident response team is a team that gets there, tries to put out the fire, and we'll see how. And from there on, we see the measure that may be applied. In the real example that you've seen very often on TV, when the fire is really put out, after a few days, a firefighter goes to check the building's infrastructure. They research the fire, check whether it was a match that lit it, and that would be a different part of cyber incident response, but the firefighters are not looking at it anymore, they just put it out. The difference in the IT part is that we're not getting an axe. Come on, turn off the router, or the internet, turn off Amazon. No, that's not what we do. We contain little by little, and we think of the technology that person has, and check out how difficult it is. You may have an idea and you may say, well, I have Palo Alto, I have Linux. Okay, there's a change in the mindset here. Now I'm certified, but you're not. So you need to say, hey, with your team, do you know about this? Please give me a hand. Well, but it's 3 a.m. Give me a hand anyway. And this will happen in a cyber incident response team. This team also have great technical capabilities. What else is done? We can also be on the opposite side. The incident is still there. And if the incident is still there, it may happen that I can do surveillance, I can locate, and I can attack. So we need to learn about forensic techniques and malware and attack techniques, as well as protection techniques, denial of service, and many different things that may be applied. Therefore, we monitor and we say, okay, I have part of the control here. Now I need tools for this not to happen again. If it does, I need to be careful, or the administrator of the system needs to be there. We need to locate. This is something that not many people know about. Locating is being at the right time, so that whenever this happens, we have an alert already. And we need to know how to identify the alert. This could be, well, I have a scan, I'll ignore it, but I'm having a scan because I'm deviating attention, I have a side attack that comes through another network that is giving me a denial of service or an intrusion. And we need to bear that perspective in mind. So, what does an anti-incident response team do? It solves everything we can see here, and right now we're trying to solve it all. Denial of service, information leaks, compromised assets, illegal activity, pretty much everything. Policy, email, malware, and many of them are matched between them. So a malware can create a denial of service or a leak of information directly. We have quite a few differences here. There are many incident types that may be categorized with many different attack types, so we need to know them. And this means that we need a team that is multidisciplinary, that knows about this. And there's very little on this, so I do encourage you. Please do it if you feel like it, so that this can be your future. And there are people here who know about everything. Initially, we cannot be experts in everything. Databases, malware, it would be impossible. So this multidisciplinary team usually has between 5 and 8 years of experience in the world of cyber incidents. And this is where they create the team and the technique. And inside they just don't work crazy. They work with procedures and with a type of methodology that comes given by the Americans. This would be the idea. And this team would be doing this. They're trying to solve an incident that starts with one and ends with many, maybe, depending on the amount and the type of activity they have. And the attacker is not just one, it's many of them. And sometimes the attacker doesn't come from the outside, it comes from the inside. So it's even more difficult to know where the attack is coming from. So some people know about databases, other people know about malware, information leaks, technology. And when you have that perspective, you may call a team member, say, hey, give me a hand. But this is what the team is like. That's the definition of cyber incident response. It's a first intervention team with knowledge, with wide knowledge apparently, to give it to the customer and help the customer. So what you may see here, I'm going to go through it quickly, because this will be a high level, level 1. A high level is what I need to do. And when the customer has a loss of income or an impact on the service, Amazon, for example, Amazon gets there and says, well, I can't sell. Why? Because something weird is happening in the application. Okay, first intervention team, which is usually Amazon's own team. Let's see what's happening. So they are categorized at a high level and deploy the type of incident taking place. Service denial. Let's check our systems. If it's hacking, let's assess all the inputs and outputs to the system. Let's assess the traffic. And basically, this will be the maximum level. Then we have a lower level, which is level 2. And this one doesn't affect production as such. It may happen, though, that it could affect production. What happened here? Well, we found user accounts that do not belong to the system in Active Directories that the administrator didn't check. So this may lead to a bigger incident. And then we may have a third case, and what is done here is an inappropriate use or to research in the long term. Well, I kind of feel that it's really my email, that what I wrote appeared in the press, and this is something that needs to be researched in the long term. In a first intervention, the incident response team may go in, check it out and assess it, but that's not their task. They may outsource it or delegate it. To sum up, what is done here? They minimize, monitor, manage the crisis, and this is very important. We are technicians, but we also need to be able to talk to people and say, calm down, it's okay. Tomorrow you'll laugh about this. Nobody does laugh about it the day after, even though we say so, but nobody does laugh. When they create a robot on a database, you're like, what happened? Is there a poltergeist in here? My presentation disappeared. By the way, I'm Pedro Sanchez. It looks like I'm starting the presentation all over again. There was a problem with the screen.
Como decía, ¿vale? Monitorizar el incidente está...
As I was saying, we monitor the incident, we're on top of it, we manage the crisis, and we give a response. Sometimes you need to calm down people saying, and stating the action plan you're going to have. Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to apply that, and this is useful for daily life. These are not just security incidents. Any type of incident is useful. So which plan am I going to have for the peace of mind of the customer or the organization? We try to solve the situation. Containing is solving. Letting something not spread, limiting it, is already solving it. It's not spreading sideways anymore. It doesn't feel like something is happening and I don't have the control. And then of course we solve. How can I go back to the former state? And this is kind of problematic. Sometimes we cannot leave things as they are because it depends on the organization's infrastructure or the software architecture or the development of third-party stakeholders. And then we need to inform and prevent and say, okay, for this not to happen again, you need to do this, this and this, and then the customer will decide whether they need to outsource, hire, and this will be the management side of things. So all of this that I just showed you, how will it apply to a real case? Let's look at an exhaustion anatomy. Let's see what happened. So a certain company tells us, well, I just got this message. First of all, we need to check whether this is true, whether this is credible. How did I receive this? Well, it was sent by SMS, but who did? My cousin. Okay. How do you get this? Through an email. Or from this person. Who is this person? We don't know. So we check the social networks and we do intelligence. We're going to assess whether that is credible. And we talk to INCIBE. Say, hey, have you heard of this email, this campaign, or this email address? Can we give it credibility? Because often nothing will happen. We may be calling the army when they're not needed, in fact. It is important, though, to bear in mind the type of threat, because it says, well, you have 24 hours to pay, and at 1 minute past 4, you'll know about me, you'll hear from me, and we got this email at noon. What do you do here? It's a big problem. Okay, so we have hit a Russian plane. What can we do? And this is the same situation. We're getting a threat and we only have 1 minute after 4 to reply. So what do we do here? And a massive environment is created here. credibility is given to the threat. A committee is created, like crazy, without any protocol or procedure. Call this, call that, do this, do that. And that's the reality. And when you go in, you may say, okay, let's sit down and see how we can solve this and how we can adjust this. And then we'll look at the steps that may be made. First, and very essential, we have the executive meeting. We need to get together with the owners because there's a decision-making element here. I cannot decide to turn on the servers or the router. No, this decision is made by somebody else. So here we establish which are the entry points and the exit points we have. The typical network map, thought from high above. So which are the risks? If at 401 everything collapses, what are the implications for this? What are we losing? And many people have assessed this. The saying. The people who are mistrusting will have backup. So you have planned it, you have it already. And if this collapses, you can get the emergency side, you can activate it, business continuity, you have another alternative. We think of the fall. Because we don't yet know that this will happen, we need to assess the impact, which is very important. That is a risk, and obviously we need to see whether we need to activate that business continuity. This is risk management. Some organizations have it, and others, however, don't know. I'm from Zaragoza, and they tend to say, like, what? Risk management? I have an antivirus, I have a firewall. What are you talking about? So this is the reality. If there's nothing there, you need to apply your knowledge and your techniques and hope for the best. Second meeting. So we now know by the management which activation we know and what do we need to turn on and off if appropriate. How do we organize it? Secondly, how do we contain? So what was decided here basically was that we would wait to see what happens at 1 minute past 4. I don't have the knowledge, I cannot turn everything off, and I don't know what will happen. The threat didn't mention other things. So at 1 minute past 4 we listen to what's happening. And what we did here was deploying and controlling the system. And what we did basically was the following. First of all, we take control. So all the security products of the organization will be monitored. We're not the owners, but we'll monitor them. And the people from the technical team of the organization is in charge of monitoring that, because that's why they know the tool. We cannot look at what's happening so quickly, so we need to be attentive to the alerts, to the updates. We cannot patch and make Microsoft patches if necessary, but we need to take into account the necessary patches in case they need to be applied, because we still don't know how the attack was made. Passwords. Do we still have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Arming, and we tell the administrator about this. Tell us, because we can still change them. No, they're all good. Okay. They come back and say, okay, they're good now. They've been changed. These are things that have happened to us in real life. Yes, everything is super safe, everything's okay. And then he's like, hold on, I'm getting a call. In half an hour, he's like, okay, everything is sorted. Active asset control, servers, databases, everything that may be critical for the organization. And here I'm talking about a really large organization that has security measures. I insist. With the small companies, they'll be eaten up, as we see in the examples. So what is done here? Installation of security elements and deployment of virtual machines, network, analyzers, Snowbro technologies. We'll have those technologies, the customer has them, we deploy them, we'll have them in a critical status to monitor everything that goes through the internet, that goes through network at that point. And what is deployed here? Well, sandbox technologies, for example, to assess the email traffic incoming and outgoing, to check whether there was some sort of malware. What else was said? We had intruder detectors focused on network traffic, which was quite concerning because we considered that the anti-malware was well defined. And here we set up some sensors and different sub-networks, and what was done was to compile the information in the case of anomalies or problems. The surprise is that there were many problems happening out of the attacker's timetable. This created some unrest because we saw that something was happening with the infrastructure that was inherent to the attack, but something was happening. There was a little problem, something wrong in the network traffic that needed to be researched, and the reporting eventually was an application giving false positives, but it needed to be researched. So this is categorized. What do we do here? Something the company didn't have. Something very simple. The Windows logs, let's quickly set up the Windows logs, mainly in the timetable of the attack, so that we can assess and study this. And this is very important because if the log is centralized and the attacker goes into the system and erases the log, I'm done. So let's bear this in mind. And since they had technology, and most of them are organizations with Windows technology, Windows Server allows you to do this. So what we did was to set up a server within the domain with an NAS. Directly we did the forwards to the server positions and the workstations. Quite crazy actually. That requires support from the organization administrators. So what did we do with this information? It needs to be exploited. So here we are foreseeing, and we created the IC search. We're implementing technology from the organization and technology that may be open source and may help at some point in time. So we could have had Explan, but since this one was free and we knew about it, it was very useful because here we can put any sort of information, and it was very useful to do a fast index search or having a control panel at a certain point in time. What else did we do? All the requests coming from the resolutions of the DNS were transferred here through Malcolm, which is an open code project, much more evolved. This is an older version that we needed to alter so it could have made millions of requests, and this gives us the perspective of the current requests and whether there was something strange. And when the deployment was done, misconfigured in some cases, what is done here? Okay, at 401, we all look like clay statues. There was a big silence, and no one was even breathing in the systems department. Only the phones were ringing. So imagine the atmosphere. Traffic was normal. There was nothing there. The monitoring was done with Tivoli, and everything was going well. No problem. We didn't see anything. But at 4:03, funny enough, not at 4:01, but at 4:03, we started seeing lots of Google requests. All of a sudden. And that is a certain guideline. We said, okay, people are checking the email, or the news, or YouTube, whatever is happening. And obviously, checking the traffic increase, we saw the HTTPS, and we saw that most traffic was coming from a single department. And this shows you the following. Hey, you think something's going on here. Let's discard the traffic. That may be good, and this traffic is good, but what is happening here? And we started seeing this. Here I have an example with White Shark, but there were many requests regarding what was happening here. So what do we do here in this department? We're lacking a tool to monitor processes in each machine. So what we did here was to deploy Sysmon. It's an open source tool that has saved our lives. We didn't really know what was happening in that department and why there were so many requests. And talking to users, some of them were in Gmail. Some others weren't, but in most machines we had the same size of packages to Google. And this was quite weird. So Sysmon, as we'll see next. And here's a short video so you can have a look at it. And this is a tool that we made for this. So this takes the Windows loops, it parcels them, and it structures them. The executables go to a file. The origin IPs to another time, destination IPs to another place, and it generates these different sorts of files. So it gets those executables, it does a hash to calculate their footprint, and they're sent to Bisotal as a first help tool. So Sysmon is an agent from sysinternals that allows you to trace memory processes. And there are commercial processes that are very expensive for this, and Sysmon does it very easily. So we said, okay, let's not get a license from the manufacturer because it usually takes 6 hours. Let's get Sysmon, let's deploy it on this user network, and let's apply it with this tool what Sysmon is collecting. So Sysmon collected processes, and we saw a specific process that was quite weird. And funny enough, we could assess it afterwards. But what we did here was to get a tool in a server, to get the logs from the workstations, we parsed that, we put it in text files, and then we did the hashes of those executables and we launched them. And this was done in parallel, and it was left working, and we kept researching. Things didn't finish here. This is something that will help us, that is right here. Okay, I'm gonna show you the rest. I can't really see it properly. And at some point you'll see how you can see something. And this is a problem in one of the programs that we saw in the machine that led to previously doing the forensic analysis. But look at this. Here they do the hash, they calculate it. Once that is calculated, it's sent it to total virus as the first tool and option. And there were many, and this belongs to a particular machine. A 0, 0. I can't really advance it, otherwise I'll go to the next screen. Well, believe me, and you'll see the video later, there will be a note here saying that an antivirus has detected a malware. Instead of 0, it will show 1. Since we're running late, I'll continue. So what was done next? After total viruses, one of them was deemed as suspicious, and that's a little hint for me. Network traffic, at the time the attacker mentioned, the attacker hasn't published or said anything yet. HTTPS network traffic increase, and let's do a forensic analysis that actually does the acquisition. So when it does the acquisition, we use different technologies. But let's not think that there is a specific or especially strange technology. As you may see here, because I'm not seeing it properly, but it's here. And look, it's on a video here, so we can watch it more quickly.
Vale, aquí lo que estoy haciendo simplemente es me voy a recoger una serie de scripts.
So here I'm just collecting a series of scripts. And this will be one of the 1,000 free programs we have available. And as it shows here, this just does an acquisition of machine evidence. So I'm not using NASA technology. NASA uses this technology actually, but it's not NASA technology. These are scripts and CMDs, the traditional ones, that really help you in cyber response.
But de toda la vida, ¿eh?
So this is what we've always seen, but you can have acquisition, the ports, a dumping of the RAM memory, and if we advance a little bit, here we have this, the executed script, and we can see the memory dump. It's going to create a folder with all of the information that's included in that. And this script tells us how the script is developing or evolving, if we're having any errors that are appearing or anything like that. And tools, legitimate, free tools. I mean, there's nothing strange here. We're not talking about anything strange, and you can program it in order to include more tools if you want. So just basically scripts. I'm going to abort. I don't know why. Let's see. Well, the screen, I lost the screen for a moment there, but we're going to talk about something is what we call hidden channels. So if we do the forensic and we look at the evidence, we find out, we say what we've found here, what we've got here, and what we saw was that the attacker, we don't know how, well, I imagine, as in all cases, they had infected the machines, they had maybe an email that had been opened or something. I mean, the how is very difficult to find out. Above all, if you don't have preventive technology, if you don't have that, it's very difficult. And so we thought about what this was all about, these hidden channels, and attackers are using this a lot now, and they're going to increasing the use of this. We've got malware which has the leaking of information or the theft of information. So we could be talking about, for example, the use of port 443, which might have an intermediary server, or they may use social networks, which is like in the case we saw. So the idea of taking the equipment, do the reversing, looking at what the program did, we said, wow, this has been, they did this really well. And look at the technology. What did they use? Well, above all, social networks, which is just going to not set off any intruder triggers, because it would be encrypted. You'd have to have an intermediate tool with certificates to get rid of the SSL and to re-encrypt it and send it. And so they had that. So initially, that wasn't the problem. And you can see here, I'm going to do a demonstration. Let's hope we can see that. I'm going to do it without the video. So I have here I have a form, which is this one here. I've got it here so as not to have to type it all in, but what I'm going to do is a keylogger, a malware with Google Forms. So I'm going to be the bad guy now, So here we have a form. The title of the form. Acme Corp. Question. Are our products good? Short answer. And I'm going to also add an image. We're going to, well, I've got this prepared for Acme. I'll make it look nice. So I'm showing you a form. This is a Google class. I'm going to go to answers. So when the answers are written, you're going to create a spreadsheet, and we're going to call that spreadsheet, let's think of an example. Keylog, with 3 G's at the end. We'll create, and then I have my formula, my form created. Here we have the spreadsheet where the results of the form will be included. I can change the appearance, I change the color, and I send the form, and this is what we would send so that the receiver can send their information using that form. I'm going to copy, so it says copy. And now look at this. Look at this carefully, what I'm going to do now. I come here. I go, sorry, what to send, let's see. Okay, Control V, so here we have the form. And here, if I write in the answer, clothes, I send it, that will take it to the Excel spreadsheet. And then I can come back to the start of the form. And you can see here that it's been added. And that's your short course in Google. So now we're going to see something really interesting that these people did. So I'm going to edit the source code. You can see that. I'm going to go to the malware, which is decomposed, and I've got it all prepared, obviously, so that we can see it. And this is it. Okay, open it and edit it with the note block. And this malware, well, I mean, what it does is capture the keys that are being used. So it's a keylogger. And it's so simple that if we look here, we have the send button. Very simple. I can go to the source code. I can do a search, form response in lowercase. And here at the bottom, right at the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that. We take it, we take this, and we copy it. You can't see it very clearly, obviously, from that distance, but you can see where I am. Oh, it's gone, yeah. Okay, let's do it again. Okay, Control C. I go back to the source code of the application. I come here. Control V. Right, I've got the button, but now I have to tell it which Excel sheet I need. Here we can see it says entry plus a number, so I'm going to search for that. I come here, I search for it, entry point, and this indicator is the sheet where the result will be positioned. So I copy it, and I paste it. I save it, and now we can see it. This isn't Python, obviously. If it had been in Python, it would have been really easy. So now what we're going to do is we open the session. Do anything I can not to have to type it in, but here we go. We put it in Python. This is just an example so that you can get an idea. K3.py. This is just to see that, well, this works in remote, because what we're looking at here is something you have to explain. We had to explain this to the managers, and this is a simulation of what had happened. So let's see. Here I type in remote, enter, the window vanishes, and I explain this to them. You have to explain when you execute it, or you execute a program, you don't see this when you're executing it as a user. And then, for example, we could come here, open a new one, and for us to be able to see it, you can see, right? This one is a secret, it's not optimized. Here it's going to be updated. The malware isn't optimized. It goes in each column, but it's going to work in practical terms. It's taking a little while to refresh, but that's because of the connection, and if not, I'll do it myself. It's filled in some of them. And I've updated it, I've refreshed it with F5. Okay, you can see that. Completely transparent. Nobody knew that this was going to a different place, and that's a technique. What else did we see? Well, we saw that something had changed in the affected machines, and we thought, well, what have they done? We saw that the browsers were compromised. If I minimize that, I come to a different demo so you can see. If I open Firefox, and this is XP. This is a malignant or a malicious extension. I can say, download the new application. It's really nice. So we did, we looked at how the equipment had become infected, but the average user, for example, doesn't know how to get rid of them, and they don't even worry about that. Haven't you ever seen with your family, your relatives, or a customer or somebody? They have the browser full of bars. Everything except good things. So here we come. I drag it. We get this pop-up. It warns us. But we have to imagine that the user says, yes, I'm going to install. And then they reinitiate, they restart. And I've done this as a demonstration. Here I am. Well, this would be transparent. It wouldn't be visible. Here we've got FTP, and I'm going to cancel it. We're going to look at it in a different way, so I'm going to cancel it. It asks for the FTP password and user, and then it talks about a configure or a setup file. So this would be transparent there. We wouldn't see any of that. And that's going to be sent. The information is going to get sent. And so here we have a man in the middle or a man in the browser. So we've got software in the middle of the browser to capture all of the requests in such a way that, well, if I go here, for example, sorry, I'm going to kill that process, but it's not letting me because it's writing Python from before. Okay, here we go. And here, and here we go. We type in pp at total.s, password 987654321. If I sign in, that's what the user would do. He'd enter. But now look what happens. Well, in reality, in C and users, IBP data, ramming, Mozilla, Firefox, profile, I'll get there in the end, extensions, we've got a reverse connection. If I do a double click here, you can see we go to Chrome, we go to local, we go to use, and we'll go to content. There's a keylog. Log HTML. If I do a double click, can you see that? Oh, it's very, very small, but you can see it, right? It's been saved at a local level, but it could have been done. It could have been sent remote. So the browsers were compromised. You can see that. And then lastly, to top it off, we found a tool in one of the machines which really, just killed us, and the antivirus hadn't detected it. And we'll see what that was doing now. I'm going to start a virtual machine. Very basic, so you can see. We've got Kali, famous Kali, Routator. Here we're going to launch a Metaxploit. And so it receives the exploit, but here if we go to if I go to that folder, demos, we've got the putty. I'm going to do two things. First of all, here we'll leave this one analyzing it, the antivirus, and we're going to redo that just in case, reload. And in the meantime, while VirusTotal is doing that, we check it, and I'm going to execute it in the meantime. Can you see that? Applications of the administrator systems were compromised. Okay, with a difference of 4 Ks. But they allowed remote access to the machine. Yeah, take a look at that. Can you see that? We've got the processes of the machine here, and what's more, in the applications, it wasn't just the application that was compromised, but part. It wasn't activated when I just opened it, but rather when I clicked a particular button. And so imagine the degree of compromise that existed. So if we go into VirusTotal, we'll leave it doing its job, and I'll continue. So you've seen that? Hidden channels. Practically invisible. And having said that, what conclusions can we draw? Well, very easy. First of all, the guys, no. You know, the people that did this had really worked it out in advance. They, you know, knew where they had to send that malware. So they had prepared scoring of that information. They had found, well, this is still pending, but I imagine they had a fake profile, LinkedIn, they made themselves a friend of a friend of a friend. In the end, they send you an Excel sheet, and that's what it's all about. So they developed a silent APT, which used really simple technique of using a form. And in Yahoo, you've got database that you can link up, and there's a lot of this out there. And in the end, what they did was they achieved control. So they didn't produce anything at 1 minute past 4 or 3 minutes past 4 because there was a warning. But if the warning hadn't reached us, we wouldn't know that they were infected. So what did we think? Well, we thought that if they are going to go for you, you know, they really are going to go for you. You're going to be able to defend yourself, you're going to have to fight, but that's the way it works. And latest technology in malware, which is actually, that's really simple. And let's just say, a priori, well, I'll continue, even though that's running in the background. And as I was saying, you know, they can't be detected by anti-malware. And if we look at the instant response, looking at the traffic, doing the forensic work, taking the machine, doing reverse engineering, we were able to apply restrictive rules based on strings and the size of the packet being sent, the destination where it was being sent, so we can have contingencies in the detectors, antivirus, sandbox, and you know, the guidelines for the malware. And what we did was take a really aggressive approach. We had blacklists, and we took out, or we eliminated, we removed Gmail and Google in itself, and we had a list in the proxy to make sure it wouldn't, wouldn't open up. Let's see. If I do something on my computer and then the screen doesn't do the same thing, I really find that a bit confusing. But let's see. You can see that? 0 out of 25 or 30. It doesn't find anything. And this is putty, and putty works. So it's not one of these malwares that just produces an error. No, it works. Obviously, you know, as you'd expect. Well, I can guarantee you that there's going to be 0. None of them see it. And this has been tested with virus and also on a battery of virtual machines with antivirus, because sometimes they might catch it, but they were completely compromised. And what did this allow us to do? Well, it allowed us to sorry about this, because these screens are getting me confused. I don't know where the mouse is. The screen synchronization isn't working. So let's do it this way so we can see it. So what was the conclusion then? A lot of technology is not going to help, because when it comes down to it, there are things that you're not going to see it, and the only ones who can see it are the people in incident response. The knowledge, the expertise, the person who's working in instance, who suffered other incidents, and the things that would confuse others would set off a warning, an alarm in the mind of the instant response people. Others, you know, might not see it, but we would be the ones to say, hey, that's not normal. And if people hadn't, if in this case, for example, if we hadn't received that call, it would have just completely gone unseen. So I just want to stress that it's not just about technology, but it's also about techniques and, using our brains. So if there are any questions before we finish? We have a microphone in the room, please. Make sure they use the microphone.
No, solamente ya por curiosidad, ¿no intentaron hacer nada?
Did they, just out of curiosity, did they not try to do anything? No. They were they weren't, clever enough to, otherwise, if we would have caught them. Since it was at 4:01, it was at 4:01, we suddenly, we were alert to the problem, and so before they took any actions, I understand that they were going to publish data, I imagine, but they didn't have time because we filtered the proxies in the exit, or maybe they changed their mind, I don't know why. But deleting the hard disk, yeah, they could have done whatever they wanted, yes. Our idea is that they didn't actually formalize that extortion. They didn't complete it. They wanted to show how strong they were, and since they didn't manage it, they stopped. Because we'd realized. But if that had been kept silent, then they would have threatened to publish it. But no, they did it differently, and thanks to that, we managed to save the situation. That was at 4, and you found out about that at 12. In order to carry out that analysis and monitoring, how much? Well, we had 16 people. Bringing together, 16 people from incident response and the rest from the company. Another 15 or 16. We suffered, yeah. I can tell you that. I wanted to ask how many users were compromised. Next question? I can't say that. Many. A financial department. Many. And could this kind of attack be used as social engineering? So that people might devote their work in one direction and then enter by a different place. Well, we did think that could have been something lateral. We did think, yes, they were trying to distract us with this and do something on the other side. Yes, that could have happened, but it didn't happen. But it could have done, yes. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much to everybody. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.